All right, dude. We are live. Gabriel, welcome, welcome.
Let's get it.
So I haven't even officially come up with a name for this podcast yet. I'm thinking maybe business for detailers. Like I don't actually even know. But this is episode 1. So, dude, here we are. Let's get straight into it. Talk about car detailing, how to start a car detailing business. Your story. I'm interested to hear your story and how you got into it and how you got to where you are now. So why don't you sort of take us on that journey?
Sure thing, man. Awesome. Well, to be honest, I mean, the journey has been a pretty exciting one. I've already encountered my first few twists and turns, but I've had a lot of support to come through it. And a lot of that support's come from you, Aaron. So big ups to you for that, man. I would say, like, for me, how I got into detailing, funnily enough, something I actually kind of forget that it's a part of the journey, but it is. I often kind of don't bring it up because I don't want people to think that they have to have some sort of experience, with grooming or with detailing cars, in order to get started into this. But funnily enough, my very, very first job was actually grooming cars at my stepdad's car yard. So I was doing that when I was 16. And I enjoyed it, but at the time I never thought I would make a career out of it. Then lo and behold, my life takes a, completely different turn. Like I'm no longer doing that. I go to school, I'm studying law, and I'm like, sweet, this is it. Like this is what I'm going to do with myself. I'm really enjoying my subjects. And then the pandemic hits and all my classes go online. I no longer have the same sort of wraparound academic support that I used to when I was learning on campus and face to face. And, the truth is for me, like, sometimes I'm embarrassed to say it, but I've become more comfortable with it now that I've shown to myself that I can make a livelihood. But I always struggled to hold down a normal job. And I think that might be the case for a lot of entrepreneurs. I actually had a friend once tell me that, a lot of entrepreneurs are people who are unemployable. And, I can empathize with that very much, I think. Because I would often run into, like a lot of workplaces that I was at, things would just be done a certain way or rather not done a certain way, and it would just boggle the mind. I was like, this is just an extreme inefficiency here. Like, why aren't we doing anything about this? Oh, it's the way it's always been done. And that kind of complacency was something that I always sort of really struggled to accept. So when I left uni and had to go back to work, to support my family, like I was married at this point, and had a baby on the way, I was really at a crossroads. I was like, where do I go? What do I do next? And it's really interesting, Aaron, like the very first thing that kind of got me back into, in some sense, the world of cars and particularly the world of cleaning cars, were those super satisfying videos. DW Auto Care was the one that I used to watch a lot of. But then your videos as well. I always found your videos to be like the most entertaining. Like I think DW Auto Care, his videos are probably the most satisfying, but your videos with like the little GTA sounds and like those goofy sound effects, and those crazy captions. I was like, man, this guy, he's got some showmanship about this. This can be a lot of fun. And that really resonated with me, like I've always enjoyed like a good show and a good story, even if I'm sort of fumbling to tell mine. But yeah, and you had the course available, the auto clean course. I really like the idea of this sort of done for you, all inclusive. Like this is what you need to know. Like you have access to like a whole community of people that are trying to achieve this goal. And that was so helpful, like you wouldn't believe. Well, I mean, I'm sure you could believe it because you started it, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're living proof that it works in a way, but.
Yeah. Well, and what I love, Aaron, is I'm not the only one, and that's the thing that really helped me a lot about, not just watching your content, but the content of other people and seeing that, there really is a template for success here, and ultimately, like, and I'm sure you'd be the first to say this, like, it'll always come down to the individual. Like, are they willing to put in the work? Are they capable of putting in the work? Are they committed to put in? Because ultimately, it's still work. You can have the greatest blueprint in the world, but if you're too scared to actually pick up a hammer and get on the tools, you're not going to build anything.
100%. Yeah. 100%. I mean, it's not that difficult to actually start this type of business, but
that's right.
At the end of the day, you still have to pick up the tools. tools. You still have to get the clients. You still have to put in the work.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But the thing is, and this is to me what's really unique and really special about, working for yourself, particularly in the capacity of detailing, is that once you actually get started, and once you're getting out there, you're doing the mahi, you're getting the jobs, you're finding and satisfying the clients. You have the autonomy to make those changes and to implement those efficiencies and to get those tools and to make those investments that, in a context where you lack that autonomy, you're finally able to implement those things. And that's something I found really, really rewarding is, I feel like I'm finally in a circumstance and in a setting, in many, of my own creation, obviously with the support of others, like yourself and those amazing public resources that we have in New Zealand to help entrepreneurs get started and get their idea off the ground. Is that ultimately when you're the captain of the ship, you get to call the shots. And if something needs to happen and it and you have the means to make it happen, then you just do it. And, I'm not going to pretend like I'm not some super genius. Not every single one of my ideas pans out perfectly. But I get to give things a crack. And to be honest, a lot of things work, they do work. And I think that's a really, really valuable part of entrepreneurship that's really overlooked. I think a lot of people kind of have this fascination of, firing your boss and, on some level, ultimately when you're self-employed, every customer is your boss, right? So I think if people, get into this with the idea of never having to answer to anybody, well, that's not right either. Like you're going to be responsible to a lot of people. In fact, you take on a lot more responsibility. But if you're the kind of person that sees that as a welcome challenge and you can see the benefit in that, then it can be profoundly rewarding. And that's what I love so much about detailing. It makes the journey to entrepreneurship, I think, so accessible to so many people. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, for sure. It can be like a stepping stone, but also can be like just such a profitable career in its own, in itself, It's amazing, like the amount of information at our fingertips now to learn, have all this like business education that wasn't really accessible, 15, 20 years ago. You couldn't really have all of this business insider knowledge, it was only the like superior, like elites, or like it's been handed down through generations. But now, entrepreneurship is just so accessible to everyone. I feel like more and more people are realizing that actually there is a way for me to, make a living working for myself and trading my own time for my own money and building up something like for myself, right? Like
that's
so much more rewarding as well. But so Gabriel, like you come from New Zealand, likewise, we both come from New Zealand, very like sort of a small country in the scheme of things. But now with just the ability to connect online, and throughout the world, we can meet other detailers and other people around the world, which is quite amazing. But you come from quite a small area in New Zealand, in Invercargill. Do you want to tell people? Do you want to tell anyone who's listening what about Invercargill, about how you started there? Because some people, a big question, I feel like new people coming into the scene, it's like, oh, there's competition in my area. How do I start with so much competition? Or, there's not enough people living in my town. Like, how do I actually build a business? Is there enough people? So maybe, do you want to?
Look, I would love to speak to that, Aaron. Thanks for asking. So I guess to that, the first thing I want to get out of the way, particularly to people listening is, my accent. I'd like to explain that because I do live in New Zealand. I do live in Invercargill, but I don't sound like your typical Kiwi. You're not going to hear me walking in there. It's like, oh mate, can I get a packet of West 20s and a V and make sure to blow in the pie. That's not me. Although I do love a good Jimmy's pie. I'll be honest. It's the best pies in the country. But no, so I was actually born in Colombia. So my first language is Spanish. But I learned English in the United States. And when I was a teenager is when my mother and I moved to New Zealand because she married a Kiwi. And I've sort of been here ever since. And where I landed, of all places, was in Invercargill. And I think to answer that question, Aaron, about people, who are hesitant to get started, like if you're, there's different challenges one way or another. If you're in an area where detailing, where there's no competition, you're going to face really unique challenges. That doesn't mean that the work ahead of you is impossible. It just means you have to approach it in a slightly different way. If you live in an area where your market is maybe not quite saturated, but there's going to be a lot of competition. There's going to be a lot of other detailers around, and you guys are, it's funny to say the word competing for work, because the unique thing about detailing is a lot of people drive a car. And this is ultimately what I think the answer is to that question, whether it's, my community doesn't know what detailing is, or there's a ton of detailers in my area. I would say to that two things. One, if there's a ton of detailers in your area, your job in many ways is actually going to be a lot easier. Because then what you want to do is you want to attract clients. You can rank on SEO. There's already actively people are looking for detailers. And the reality of detailing is, because it's such a business with such a low barrier to entry, a lot of people start detailing that, they start because they want to do detailing, when the reality is we're a customer service industry, right? Detailing is just happens to be the means through which we serve our customers. And I think one of the unique things with if you live in an area where there's a lot of detailers, if you are professional enough to do something as simple as answer the phone, keep in touch with your customers. If you have the commitment to be a customer service focused person first and a great detailer second, you're going to have no trouble, provided you have the right support around things like SEO. And that's where, people, I would encourage them to reach out to someone like you, or someone who's willing to help them along those lines. But the resources are there. The blueprints are there for you to carve out your own unique niche relatively quickly, if you live in an area where there's other detailers. So I definitely wouldn't let that, you wouldn't let that, scare someone away from entering the business, because ultimately what we're doing is we're entering the world of business, and all business is, at the end of the day, is you're dealing with people. So if you have the comfort and the confidence within yourself, to deal with others, you'll do great. And if you lack that confidence now, you can develop it. There's a quote, I think it comes from Henry Ford, and it really resonates with me because I think it's true. Whether you think you can or can, you're right. And ultimately, it's the mindset that you come into it with that will determine your outcome. And if you need to change your mindset, there's ways to do that. Now, the other half of that question, what if your community, maybe your community is quite small, or, a lot of people in your area don't know what detailing is. So that's the circumstance that I found myself in Invercargill. And I would say in many ways that poses, some additional complexity, but so far I've managed to overcome that. And so what that's looked like for me in my area, Invercargill is a city of about, it's over 50,000 people. So it's fairly large. But the thing is, there's smaller communities. Like I know we have a student, that's gone through auto clean in Innisfell. And I think that's a community of about 13,000 people. But there's, detailing has its own market there. He ranks on SEO. He's competing with other detailers and he's doing great, but his customers already know what detailing is. He's after a slice of the pie and he's getting it. And that's great because he's got, people like you to support him. For me, even though Invercargill is a bigger area, it's a community that wasn't really too familiar with detailing as a concept. Like we've had, our most prominent detailers down here are still primarily identified with, vehicle grooming or car grooming, which, to me, is a more New Zealand term, but, objectively speaking, I'd say you've probably, obviously you got car washing is the most basic service. And then grooming is we're going to touch the interior as well. But that, to me, detailing is sort of a cut above. And detailing, it's more labor intensive. To me, it's more specialized work, a bit of a labor of love. And so commands a higher price point. And, people in my area, like in many areas, particularly rural areas, are very sensitive to price. And so, telling someone that I was I'm going to charge them several $100s to clean their car, to look at an Invercargill local in the eye and tell them you're serious about that can be quite an intimidating thing at first. But once you realize that ultimately what you're selling is a result that you can deliver and that you stand behind, and how much it's worth, then what I found incredibly helpful, Aaron, is making videos of my work, and the advice that you gave me, develop a personal brand, make yourself the focus of your business. People want to buy into, people want to get your vote of confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, like, people want to buy people. They don't want to buy business. Like, people want to deal with people. They don't want to deal with big business. They want personal personalized interaction with someone, you know, and that's our business is very people to people, you know. You're delivering a service, you know, you're dealing with the client. As a mobile car detailer, you're at their house, you know, you're at their home, their private residence. That's quite personal, you know. You're actually inside their comfort zone. So you have to be able to deal with people and like be comfortable talking with people. Because it's you. Like, you become the business, especially in those early days. Like, you are the business, you know.
Exactly. No, I completely agree with that. And the other thing too is like, even, you know, if you're having a hard time justifying your price to yourself, you know, another thing I would say to that is work out your costs. And you know, pretty quickly you actually begin to realize, like, once you begin to account for all of the true costs associated with delivering your product, right? Like the hours that you spend marketing it, or maybe creating content for it, you know, dealing with people, booking jobs, you know, obviously the taxes that you'll pay, you know, once you're doing this legitimately. And, you know, not a lot of people start out doing sort of cash jobs, but I moved away from that fairly quickly because I wanted to make this a sustainable livelihood as quickly as I could. You know, once you take into account even things like the portion of your home that's actually dedicated to your home office, the depreciation of your equipment, the cost of your chemicals, like that price tag begins to make a lot of sense, especially when on top of all of that, you account for the fact that you need to be paid a wage as well. You know, you need to be, you know, taking in the right amount for your work and a price that is actually appropriate, you know, to your level of skill, to your level of expertise, to your level of knowledge, to the tools that you have. It's a fairly specialized thing. And, you know, not everyone is going to see the value in that. But to that, I would say two things. One is, well, your job is to communicate that value. And you may not convince everybody, and that's okay. If someone doesn't value your work, they're not going to be your customer anyway. You know, to me, there's not a whole lot of point in trying to win business from someone who's so reluctant to give it to you in the first place. And I think that's another thing that a lot of retailers need to realize is just because our work has a low barrier to entry doesn't mean that every job is a good job to take on. It's not.
Yeah. And like, you can't just start like chopping off the price every time someone says it's too expensive, you know. You need to stand up for what you're worth.
Well, that's right. Because at the end of the day, if somebody wants something cheaper, then what they want is a different product, and that's okay, you know. Yeah. And I think it's good to you know, to be cognizant and to be aware, you know, of maybe, you know, places, you know, that you can maybe direct the customer if they're looking for a different service entirely. I think what I personally, and that, look, this, I'm not saying this doesn't work or that people shouldn't do this, but it doesn't align with my personal brand and my values, you know, as personally. I feel like how many times I'm going to say the word personal. But I know there's a lot of detailers that, you know, go online and love making videos. And I get it. They get the views, they get the clicks, but they love making videos about, you know, talking about like this terrible customer that, you know, thought like, oh, how many $100 to clean a car, blah, 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 blah. And you know, I think I understand that on some level it's fun, but on the other side, I think, you know, if you're dealing with a client that just, you know, isn't aware of detailing as an industry, I think that's what a lot of those instances are. You know, they're thinking that, you know, a car wash, you know, that's like $20. And it's like, well, what we're doing is something substantially different. You know, the outcome may seem similar, like in some level, the similarity, and it stops there, is that we're both trying to make your car look a little bit better. But the reality is our service is for someone, you know, who's very enthusiastic about the appearance of their vehicle. You know, they value it. I think the simplest way to put it, and this is why I love the content so much, you know, is there's a big difference between what your car looks like when you know, put a few coins in the coin op car wash, versus when you actually see, you know, the videos of detailers cleaning a car. You know, there's no car wash in the world, you know, that's going to take oral swabs and Q-tips, you know, around the buttons of your steering wheel. And not everyone values that, and that's okay. But some people, a lot of people, like it enough that detailing is an industry that's worth billions of dollars worldwide, and for good reason. People like their cars. For a lot of folks, it's the second biggest asset that they own. It's the means through which we travel. It's such a big part of our lives, and so I think the work we do is important in that regard too.
Absolutely, especially like with protecting the paintwork as well. You know, like you go through a standard car wash, you're not going to get the appropriate protection that you can get from a detailer. Like, let's just like, there are like many forms of protection these days, like wax sealants, ceramic coatings. There's even a product I want to talk with you about a bit later. Maybe it's called iClear, iClear. It's like self-healing. It's a self-healing product similar to you were telling me about something recently. What's it called? From
hand applied clear.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
What was the brand that you were talking about?
So the brand that I was talking about there was it was produced by Paint Pros LLC, and it's a later version of a product. Their first product was Diamond Clear, which no longer exists. The latest iteration of the product is called Shiny Car Stuff, and it's
Shiny Car Stuff. That's
yeah.
There's a few.
Yeah,
I think there are a few different companies producing something similar now. Well, maybe only like one or two, but I did see something recently. It was another brand. I can't remember the name, but looks amazing. So that's like, anyway, back to my point was there's like a bunch of different protections that you can use as a detailer, and we're specialized in these products and how they work and how they're applied. You go down to a car wash, they're not specialized in those products. They don't understand how these products work, and they're not going to learn how they work because they're not getting paid enough,
No. And that's it. I mean, they're different services at the end of the day. I mean, you can buy a wallet from Kmart and it's going to hold your cards, or you can see a leather craftsman who's going to spend hours like meticulously working with shell cordovan, full grain leather, and hand stitching, and and at the end of the day, like, I mean, people can look at that and say like, oh well, a wallet's a wallet, and it's like, sure, a wallet's a wallet. A car is a car, but a Lamborghini is not a Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But not saying any people with Toyota Corollas still like getting their cars detailed.
100%. And that's the other thing too that I want to throw out there. Like, personally, I'm of the belief, a lot of people think that detailing is something that, is only done for expensive cars. I couldn't agree more. Personally, I find interiors to do the most rewarding, and a lot of people, might disagree with that. But the reason I find interiors the most rewarding is because, dirty confession, I'm not a car guy. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, it's not to say that I don't like cars. I mean, I clearly like cars enough to make them my livelihood, right? But I don't even know what the literage of my engine is. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm still not 100% sure what it means to have a 1.4 liter engine.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what I like about the work that I do is that, a lot of people don't clean their cars. And a lot of times it's not because they're too lazy to do it, but one, the work is fairly physical. It can be fairly difficult. And the number of surfaces that you're working with. I mean, in many ways, a detailer is a very knowledgeable janitor, but for a car in some sense, right? And so, we're capable of delivering a result that, a lot of people, unless they're willing to take the time to acquire the tools and educate themselves on what we do, they may not be able to achieve that same result. And so to actually give someone the gift and the opportunity of getting a car that feels like new without having to, make the major financial commitment to getting a new vehicle is, all of a sudden getting your car detailed becomes a much cheaper way, a much more economically viable way of having the thrill of a new car, except it's with a set of wheels that you already own. And when taken into that wider context, detailing, its price point and the purpose behind it all of a sudden begin to make sense, because a car wash is never going to give you that feeling and that satisfaction. Yeah. And I'm not the kind of detailer that says never take your car through a car wash. Like, no, I believe the car wash still has its place. But ultimately at the end of the day, if you want to fall in love with your car all over again, no one is going to give you that experience better than a professional detailer will.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Cool. So I want to sort of touch back a little bit on, you starting out, and I want to kind of find out, what do you think the biggest challenges were for you? Like, what have been like some of the biggest challenges for you, like getting from where you are to where you are now?
So I would say, for me, I was in a very unique situation, living in New Zealand. If you live in New Zealand and you want to get into detailing, get in touch with Aaron, get in touch with me, as soon as possible, because the amount of resources that are available to you in this country are actually kind of insane. So for me, I was very, very privileged in the sense that, getting together the financial resources to start a detailing business, was not a huge difficulty for me. And part of the reason for that is in my instance, I was able to access the support of a program in New Zealand called the Generator. And so the Generator will actually offer you seed funding that is not something you have to pay back, provided you use the funding appropriately, and they'll only give you the funding if you're diligent enough to put together a good enough business plan that they know that they're investing in something that's going to make sense and that's going to, that has the potential to develop. And as a quick note, if you think that, you're somehow going to game the system, to get the funding, to buy yourself toys or something like that, the amount of work that you have to put in, to actually get the funding is, if you spend that time at work, you're going to get paid way more. This process is to help you build something good. So I would say for me, the biggest challenge when I was actually starting out is the challenge was unique to me because it was getting through the steps of that Generator process. But the reality is, if you're serious about entrepreneurship, there's steps you're going to have to take anyway. But if you live in New Zealand, those steps will also be rewarded with, the start to kind of give you the financial means to acquire the tools that you need. But functionally speaking, what that meant for me is, I had to get in there and I had to work out, is this going to make money? Because a lot of people think if you're making $30 an hour, let's say, this is far too low for what a detailer should make. If you're making $30 an hour, that you're going to make money because all you're selling is your labor. Well, not really. There's a lot that goes into running a business. It's not that complicated, but you do want to have a thorough understanding of it. You do want to make sure you understand how taxes work, how depreciation works, how the cost of your actual chemicals, all these things that are consumable and associated with your business. If you're detailing at home, how much power might you use, how much water if you live in a metered area. You don't have to get all these things perfectly, but the point that I'm saying is that if you look at what detailers generally charge, most detailers typically won't do a job for under 200 New Zealand minimum. Even for me, I've started kind of moving away from that. I'm now kind of at the $300 or $400 price point because my skill is worth it and people believe enough in what I do and that they value my work accordingly. And I help them. I help them see that, through my content and through the way that I communicate what I do. If you start with the price point right, you can figure out the other stuff later. But for me, one of the challenges was, I had to actually work those numbers out before I got the funding to start my business. And so that was one of the first challenges I had to overcome, was figuring all that out. But I will say that I'm extremely glad that I have the opportunity where, I was basically kind of forced in some sense to figure those numbers out before coming into it, because that helped me avoid what is probably one of the most common pitfalls for detailers starting out, and that's being too cheap. People that try and offer detailing competing solely on price are not going to be detailing for long. Yeah. Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree there. Yeah. You definitely don't want to undervalue your services. You don't want to undercut the market either. Like, there is already going to be a market price. You want to be somewhere in the middle. And in my opinion, I feel like you want to be somewhere in the middle of your market, in your area, right? You don't want to overcharge because you're still learning. You definitely don't want to undercharge. You want to pay a fair price. You're going to deliver a good result. Maybe it's going to take you a little bit longer, just have a little bit more patience. Gabriel, if you only had $500 to start again, what would you spend that on? Like, let's just say you only had $500, what would you spend it on? How would you go out and get your first client? What would you buy?
Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind is not a detailing tool, but it's a tool that if you're just starting detailing and you don't have this, you're going to come to regret it very quickly. Get good knee pads. And when I say good knee pads, don't get the $8 ones for $5 at Mitre 10. Like, get the $30 cushy ones, because $30 ain't a lot when it really comes down to it. I would say that's the first step, because, when we're starting out, if you don't have like a mobile van and a rig, and here's the thing, at the end of the day, all that other stuff, right? It has its place. It's valuable. It's great to have, but you don't need it to start. I would say if you only had $500, I would set aside, probably 100 of that toward like education and upskilling. And the reason I'd say that that's really valuable is because when you start, if you don't have access to a group of people that are already experienced and have done this, it's really easy to, as soon as you hit your first hurdle, to decide to quit. And the reason for that is because ultimately, being an entrepreneur is quite an undertaking. So if you're not surrounded or have access or connected with a group of people that have achieved what you're trying to achieve, it can be very easy to feel overwhelmed and think that you're trying to accomplish the impossible. In many ways, it can sometimes feel like that. But once you have the wraparound support and the knowledge of people who can, give you the personal assurance that what you're doing is realistic, and they can help you ensure that it's realistic. When you communicate things like your pricing, your technique, your expectations, I would say that's probably the most important investment. In some sense, almost more important than the tools. Yeah. Because what you lack in tools when you're starting out, you can make up for it in time. You shouldn't stay that way forever, but at the start, you can definitely do that. So that's the first thing I would do. I would spend. So what's the total now? We're $130. You got knee pads, and we got some kind of course or some kind of community, and to make it paid as well. I think is worthwhile as well, because you want to have some skin in the game, and that's one of the first things you communicated to me. And I think that advice was so valuable. You want to make use of those funds as soon as possible. When you pay for knowledge, I think you appreciate it in a way that you may not otherwise have had if you just saw a YouTube video and called it a day. And YouTube is still a huge teacher of mine. But definitely. Yeah, you don't discount that ever. But knowledge that you pay for is going to help you really appreciate and then implement that knowledge. The next thing that I would do in terms of tools, your real workhorse, a lot of people might think pressure washer straight away. You don't, crazy tip, you don't actually need a pressure washer to detail the car. You really don't. I would say more important is when I say vacuum, this is the funny thing about vacuums, right? So, Aaron, reel me in if I get a little too nerdy here, because I have a little bit of a technical background when it comes to vacuums. But here's a little secret. You don't have to spend a lot to get a good vacuum. What you want to make sure that it's just the type of vacuum that you get. So if you want a vacuum, don't go to Briscoe's. Don't go to No Leaming. It's not that they sell bad vacuums, but what they sell is not what you need. As a detailer, you need a shop vac. You need a garage vacuum. Go to a hardware store. Yeah. Maybe Godfrey's, right? And don't spend hundreds and hundreds. People can spend thousands on a vacuum.
Yeah.
Right? So at home, my vacuum is I got a Dyson, V10 when it first came out. I paid about $1,300 for it. I use that for home, not because it has better suction, but because the form factor is more convenient. My shop vac is $130. It was a Bosch Universal V15, I think it was. And the suction on that is much stronger than my $1,400 domestic vacuum. So why do I have, $1,200? It was over $1,000. It was too much. Why do I have such an expensive vacuum for the home and such a, quote unquote cheap vacuum for the business?
The business, yeah.
Yeah. The reality is that my cheap, quote unquote cheap vacuum, well, I mean, the price of it, the ticket was fairly low, but it's the feature and the spec that you need to get, right? My shop vac, the only reason I don't use that to clean my house is because it's less convenient than a cordless vacuum. But when you're detailing, what you want to have is great suction, high airflow, high volume, the ability to pick up wet material. And that is something that almost no domestic vacuum is going to offer you. If you have a good wet vac with good capacity, a wet and dry vac as well, you're going to be able to tackle, some of the most difficult jobs. And truth be told, that's probably one of the biggest things that sets you apart from someone who has the time to clean their own car is the ability to even do things. For example, extraction. I know that company Rip Clean in the US is making a killing by basically selling people their own shop vacs to them. And how they're doing that is they're selling people a longer hose, and an extractor head attachment, which, fun fact, if you want to do an extraction without an extractor, you don't even need an extractor head. All you need is your shop vac. It will pull liquid. And it's not even going to put additional strain on your motor. The only thing you want to make sure that you're doing if you're going to do, if you're going to suck up a large amount of liquid with your shop vac is preferably get yourself a shop vac that has a sleeve you can put over the filter, and that'll help protect the paper filter from getting exposed to too much moisture. But my shop vac, that Bosch one that I've got, it does that. And that's the thing. A shop vac is just a bucket with a motor on top. So that's I would say that's the next place that you want to spend, your next $130. So our total is $260. So we've spent $260. We've got a shop vac, we've got a good course, we've got a good community, and we've got a way to protect our knees. Then the next thing I would say is microfiber towels. I mean,
Dude,
they're the go-to winner, the king of this industry. This industry runs on microfiber. And the crazy thing is, it's not that you can spend a stupid amount of money on microfibers, but if you get really down the rabbit hole, you can learn about blends. You can learn about polyester and polyamide, 70-30 and 80-20, GSM, and all those metrics. When you become a professional, you're doing this for a long time. Those numbers are going to mean something to you, and they should. But if you're starting out, look for something that's plushy. Just keep it simple. If you can find something that's plushy, that's great. If you can't find something that's plushy, maybe just reserve it for the interior, right? And I would say, if you spend $30 on microfibers, whether that's from Super Cheap Auto or the Warehouse, if you want to start off really basic, or if you want to go a little bit, a cut above, if you're in New Zealand, microfibersupply.co.nz, or one of these kind of specialty sites where, are you going to be paying more for an individual towel? Sure, but you're going to get something that's a little bit higher quality. And you don't need to buy a stupid amount to begin with. Spend $30 to $50 on microfiber towels, and that's gonna be enough to do. You're going to be able to touch the exterior of your paintwork, and you're going to definitely be able to do your interior. So what does that leave our total at now? We're, I think, probably at 300 thereabouts.
Probably around 300.
Around
good, yeah.
300. Okay, so we've got 200 more to go. All right. Next thing I would do, and now this is maybe a slightly controversial one here. Maybe I've been watching too much Ivan Lacrosse stuff on YouTube, but the man is right when the man is right. Rinseless wash is an incredible product, incredible technology. It's been around for 30 years. It's well tested. It works. Aaron, I know you and your dad started waterless washing. So I mean, clearly the stuff works, and that was a long time ago. Modern rinseless washes that have a high concentration of polymers and surfactants, are so effective. Personally, I'm a big fan of a new product I've started using, which is Nighthawk brand USA. They have a rinseless wash that dilutes at a concentration of 896 to 1. So what that means is, if you have a liter, you only need to put in like 1.1 milliliters of this stuff, and you've got a liter of solution straight away. And the fantastic thing about rinseless wash is you can clean a car's exterior with it. You don't even need a pressure washer. You just get a bucket, and if you want to get fancy, get a little pump sprayer, a garden pump sprayer. Please do not spend $80 on an IK foamer straight away. You don't need it. And even in terms of foamer, I'll give a little tip. The Solo Clean Line foaming range, foams better and is cheaper. Just throwing that out there. And it doesn't lose pressure quite as quickly as some of the IK stuff. I think the problem with detailers, I think we have a tendency to see what other people use online, particularly
I want to buy the best, what we think is the best. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But no, just because something's popular doesn't mean it's the best option. It may not even be available to you,
Yeah.
So anyway, rinseless wash, what's really unique about it, right? Interior detailer. You can clean an interior incredibly well with rinseless wash. Rinseless wash will do an outstanding job of cleaning door jambs. Rinseless wash will do an outstanding job of cleaning the exterior of a vehicle. If you want to get real bougie, you can buy a rinseless wash sponge, but a plushy microfiber towel will be just fine as well. Yeah. Maybe just buy a bucket from an auto parts store with a grit guard. It's going to set you back about $20 total. If you're getting a fairly bougie bucket and a grit guard, which you don't need, but I'm going to presume you have a hose. But if you need to buy a hose, get something on a freestanding reel. But you probably already have that. If you don't, your budget might go from $500 to $550. It's not expensive to get like a decent hose on a reel. Something that's easy to put away when you finish. But if you got a bucket, a grit guard, a liter of so personally I bought a gallon of this Nighthawk stuff from the US. I ended up paying, I think, about 140 New Zealand. You may not need to do that when you're starting out. A 16-ounce bottle or a 330 ml, 400 ml bottle is going to be enough for you. That's probably going to set you back about $30 as well. You can clean the interior of a car with that, and you can clean the exterior of a car with that, and even wheels. A lot of people are really surprised to hear about this, but even wheel cleaning. If the wheels are not too hammered, you can still clean them with rinseless wash and a microfiber and a little bit of elbow grease. So as long as you've got probably, I'd say, a couple microfibers for the interior, probably a few for the exterior, and a few for the wheels. Which if you're spending $50 on microfiber towels, you're going to have more than enough to do all that. Keep them color-colored preferably as well. And you can literally detail a whole car with just those products. Now, bear in mind, if the rims are quite dirty, it's not to say you're not going to be able to clean them. You're going to make them look much better than they were before. But ultimately there is a difference between, rinseless is one of the less aggressive chemicals. So, you can only expect results to a point when you're cleaning the wheels, but you can still clean the wheels. You can still offer a good, competent detailing service with your time, your visual attention to detail, making sure that you're not overlooking any areas. Don't forget a door jamb. Don't forget to clean the gas cap. Do all those things with just rinseless wash. You've detailed a car. And that's a detail that, even on that very, very basic level, I think is going to be worth at least a couple $100. If you're just starting out, that's good enough. If you're taking, several hours to clean that car using just those very, very basic tools, you can still be netting about $60 an hour, which is a reasonable rate for a professional, doing a trade such as ours. And so I would say, if we get, spend $30 to $40 on rinseless, a bucket, credit card, and those things, and the shop vac, I think we might even be under 500 at this point.
I think we're under 500. Yeah, I think we're probably at like 350 to 400. So you've got 100, you've got another 100, 150 to spend. So you can see like it doesn't actually cost much to just get a car to a position where it's you can earn money for it.
It's your time and your patience. That's what I think detailing really is at the end of the day. I mean, the tools the tools that I have now versus when I just started out, they make my job easier. They improve some of my results marginally. But at the end of the day, it's my ability to see things or to know to touch and clean things that most people will just completely overlook. A very, very small example, right? A lot of people, I've got these light switches behind me, right? A lot of people, in their homes just kind of have like a ring of brown filth around a light switch. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but I've lived in a lot of places.
It happens. Yeah.
As a detailer, I see that and I want to get rid of it. And here's the tricky thing. It's not hard you get a brush and some water and a little bit of soap and you just clean it off. Yeah. And straight away, that whole wall looks way better. That's what a detailer will do for your car.
Yeah.
They will notice these small things. And that's why I would say to invest, if you only have $500, investing 1/5 of that into education alone is so valuable, because getting linked up with other detailers is, and you kind of absorb their knowledge by osmosis. You begin to see things with the same eyes that they do. So all those bits of grime that you're going to clean, your customers never seen them in their vehicle, but you know what they will see? When they're not there. And all of a sudden that car feels new again. That's why most people, they try and clean their own cars. It's not going to feel like a new car. Why? Because they're never cleaning the door jambs. Most people don't even know what a door jamb is.
Yeah, they don't understand the process. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But they value the result, and that's what you're selling them.
Yeah, 100%. So what would you spend that last $100 on then?
This is a tricky one. Let me think. See, part of me is inclined to say pressure washer, but I would say, and this is a hot take, unless you have, you can spend $100 on a pressure washer, but you can't spend $100 on a pressure washer. Here's what I mean by that. You can spend $100 on just the pressure washer, but to really get the full benefit out of a pressure washer, you're going to have to spend more than that on the peripherals. So getting a stubby gun, a decent foam cannon, and a good hose that's not going to kink on you all the time. And that's not those terrible little vinyl hoses that come with those $100 pressure washers. The $100 pressure washer, truth be told, I've started, I'm upgrading from that very shortly. But again, I can still do a fantastic job of a car with the Karcher K2, the cheapest Karcher you can get. But I have spent about 2 or 3 times what I paid on the K2 on things like the stubby gun, the hose, the foam cannon, the tips, the wands, all of that stuff. Because at the end of the day, the pressure washer is just delivering, you don't need a very high PSI to clean a car. Flow rate, helps a lot. But even that you can make up for with certain chemicals and with a certain level of patience, right? You can spend $100 on the pressure washer, but personally, I think, until you have probably a good 300 or 400 to put on the peripherals alone, I would maybe reserve that money on the pressure washer and maybe look at getting other things instead that might make your life a little bit easier around it. If you're primarily looking at a waterless system, I'd probably spend that last $100 on, as an example, a really good, high capacity pump sprayer. Maybe that's when I'd look at something like an IK foam or a 12 liter or a solo clean line, because that is in some sense a pressure washer, so to speak. It's a way of delivering, a wash chemical, depositing it onto a paint surface, and doing that plus a bucket and either a rinseless wash sponge or a plushy microfiber full of rinseless wash. That's going to actually give you a really professional result. If you're that committed and that, understanding of a proper rinseless wash process, that's probably what I would spend that last $100 on. And I'd say you'd get a very good return on investment for that. Almost more so than a pressure washer to start.
Nice. I think it's a good selection. I think you can definitely go out and start earning a living with that 100%. I would, personally, I would probably add in like some sort of APC. I know rinseless wash can work inside, but there are times where like an APC can just break down dirt much easier. It's going to make the job much easier, and you can pick it up for like $10, right? You can pick a bottle of it up for like next to nothing. Go out to your local hardware store, local car, auto parts, auto car care store, and pick a bottle up for $10, right? So,
that's very true, actually. And on that note, another thing that I actually forgot is I would say this is a little hack of mine, but people might think this is ridiculous, but a polydent denture toothbrush. Don't ever put it to your teeth. It's not for your teeth, it's for dentures. But the reason I say these things are so fantastic is because, part of the reason that rinseless wash can be so effective, even on something like pedals, which can be quite grimy, quite gross, a good, a polydent toothbrush is going to have stiff enough bristles that the rinseless wash is just going to provide a means to kind of, loosen up that dirt that the brush is actually doing the work. And that's the thing about when you go into a rinseless wash product. And if you want a good APC, I mean, here's another little hack. Aaron, you talk a lot about mild citrus-based degreaser, right? Stuff is fantastic. PNS Interior Express, that's a very famous product in the industry, and for good reason. But even if you're at the supermarket, if you get something like an EcoWise plant-based, citrus-based home cleaner, it's the same thing. In many ways, ultimately the cutting power comes from citrus. It's a citrus cleaner. It may not foam up as nice as PNS. It may not have the camera appeal. But yeah, definitely that stuff is gonna cut through grime a little bit of a cut above. But even if you're using rinseless, what does a lot of the work is, again, agitation, abrasion, stiff bristles, time. So I would say if you're really on that limited budget, you're gonna trade your time.
Yeah, that's right. You're just going to spend a little bit more doing the job. So we've got all of our tools, we're ready to go. How do we go out and get that first client? We know with what we've spent $500, we've got everything we need to actually, deliver a good service. How do we go and get that first client? What would you do? What did you do just to start to get that first client?
Okay, so the first thing I did, Aaron, is I booked myself out a really expensive studio with a test vehicle, and that's called my own car in my driveway. So that's the very first thing I would do is I detail your own car, and film as much of that process as you can. Your smartphone has a great camera. Don't discount it. Like most people, their smartphone, might even be worth more than their laptop these days, or their computer or what have you. So that thing's gonna have a good enough camera that you can film great content showing off your process, without, you don't have to hire anybody. You just, you download CapCut. Learned that from you, Aaron. I didn't know what CapCut was. I was never really on TikTok, funnily enough, until I wanted to watch more detailed videos. I noticed more of them are on TikTok than on YouTube.
Now you're starting to get some traction now, I've seen.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And look, and where that's come from is, it's literally my phone. If you want to get flash about it, get a cheap tripod, like $20-$30 and put your phone in it. It makes it a little bit easier to film stuff. You don't have to do it one-handed. But in saying that, a lot of the top guys right now on TikTok are still just holding their phone and doing stuff one-handed because it works. The picture is good. The camera is good. It's a little annoying, but, and if you're filming that, and you put it out there, say, put it on your own personal Facebook page, write a post, tell people, I'm starting a business. This is a new venture for me. This is what I do. What do you think of my work? How much do you think this work is worth? Et cetera, et cetera. Get some buzz. Tell people about what you're doing. anytime you get the chance, tell someone, I'm starting a business. This is what I'm doing. And this
Yeah.
one of the best tips that I learned. I'm a huge fan of Jim Penman, the guy who started Jim's Mowing, which has become Jim's Group, and they've got Jim's Everything now. You know, and Jim said one of the keys to his success is he wrote a book called Every Customer a Fan. And basically, look, I'm not going to pretend, I'm not Ty Lopez. I'm not going to pretend I read all the book, here in my garage. Just kidding. No hate to Ty Lopez, but I always thought that was a funny video. But I did have a look through the book and, the first chapters, and I think I got the idea fairly quickly. And that was, if people are personally invested in you and in your success, and they're excited about what you're doing, and they can almost see their own potential in you through your hard work, people like that. People like a good story. And that's what you've said is we're dealing on a personal level, on a people to people level. So if you start with your friends and family, you tell them about what you're doing, you make videos of your own car. A lot of people say go and clean your friends and family's cars for free when you're starting. I don't think you need to do that. I actually think if your friends and family are paying you from the word go, they feel like early adopters in your success. They feel like a stakeholder in your journey all the way through. And people want to be a part of that. The people in your life that want to see you succeed, they want to see you succeed, right?
Yeah,
so if they're
100%.
people whose business you can win, then that's a fantastic thing. That's a great opportunity. So that's what I would do is I would start by filming my work and letting people know and having something you can show them. Because the difficult thing about a service-based business is, prior to the age of smartphones, what were you going to do? Take a Polaroid camera and, show them a Polaroid of the clean car, before and after? No, you pull out your phone. I'll tell you another little sneaky tip. Some of the first jobs that I booked before I had actually filmed my own content, I showed people videos of your work, Aaron. I said, This is what I do. Because I knew I could do it. There you go. And that's the thing. I wasn't dishonest because I knew I could do it. I was going to do the same thing to their car. So I would say that's the thing is when you're selling detailing, you're selling the dream. You're selling people the satisfaction they get when they watch these videos and they're like, I can have that for my car? Really? Yeah, you can. And I'm the guy who can do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You can build a car detailing business so quickly now just because of social media and just because we can make the customer aware so much quicker, with social media, with the video marketing.
That's right. But it doesn't all have to be online. And that's the thing too, is do I generate a lot of my own leads through the videos I make on TikTok? Absolutely, I do. They're great videos. I enjoy making them. I'm learning how to make them better every day. But that's probably, even though it's a large chunk of where my leads come from, a lot of them are still word of mouth. Oh, you're doing these cars, but how do I stay at the forefront of my friends and family's mind as I keep making the videos, I keep putting them out. They watch them, they enjoy them. It reminds them that I exist and that my business exists. And all of a sudden, I would like my car cleaned. Or, my anniversary is coming up. I can have this done for my husband and his prized truck that he loves so much. They'll give you a call. And that's how you start.
Exactly. No, you've nailed it. All right, Gabriel, I want to finish off with one last question I've got, which is where do you sort of think car detailing is going to be in 5-10 years? Where's the future of it going? Is it worth starting this business?
I would say absolutely, definitely. I think detailing is a business that's growing rapidly. And that's because of social media. And I think that, it's one of these things, don't ever feel like you're late to the party, because the reality is that, information is so accessible in this day and age that, you can learn off of others' mistakes so quickly, and that's the wonderful thing, is that instead of having to learn every single lesson the hard way, again, if you surround yourself with people who have walked down this road and who are always listening to the advice of others, like you can start this right now, and you're not, the likelihood of you failing is almost 1-to-1 with your ability to listen. And that's the thing is if you can keep your ears open and you keep your head on a swivel and you stay cognizant of, what are the latest trends? What are the newest products? I would say the only people for whom I wouldn't advise getting into this as a business is the people who are afraid of change. Because I would say that the detailing, especially now, with the new brands that are coming up and seriously nipping at the heels of these, industry giants that have been around for so long, technology's changing, products are changing. there's a lot of people that still haven't even heard of ceramic coating. They think the only thing you can put on your car is wax. Even sealants came out 30 years ago. Some people don't even know about those still. I would say that if you're the kind of person that is interested enough in detailing as an industry, that you're willing to keep up with the times and adopt technologies as they come out and as they're proven to work, and you're willing to experiment and try some things yourself, I would say that things are only going up from here. And I would say the only people for whom, who are getting left behind are the people who no longer want to keep up. And the truth is, not everyone needs to do that. There's some guys that have been, grooming cars, for like 20, 30, 40 years. They've had enough of it. They don't want to learn the new stuff, and they're probably going to retire soon. And that's fine. And learn from those people, because they've got a lot to teach you as well. Don't think just because you're new to the game that you know better than them either. Again, I'd say it's the humility and a willingness to learn. I would say as long as you've got that, detailing is only going to get better and better. And the last point I would say is, if you're worried about, market saturation, too many people getting into the industry, not knowing what they're doing. Well, here's the thing. If you're not one of those people, and if you're committed to learn how to do things properly, take your time, be patient, know what you're worth, and don't sink the industry. Don't make it a race to the bottom. Even if other people are doing that, you don't have to be a part of that game. You don't have to be racing to the bottom with everybody else. If you're in one of those areas where, everyone's calling themselves a detailer and everyone thinks they can do it for nothing, at the end of the day, service-based industries are prone to this. It's like lawn mowing. Anybody, quote unquote, can get a lawnmower and start mowing people's lawns for next to nothing, but they're not doing it for long. So I would say even that, don't let that intimidate you. As long as you're willing to stick to it, do it properly, cultivate your personal brand, cultivate your own confidence, your own skills, your ability to deal with people, you have nothing to fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. I think we'll finish up on that. Awesome. Do you want to let people know where they can find you, your TikTok and?
Yeah, man, for sure. So I'm most active on TikTok. If you want to check out some of my cheeky videos, I'm Invercargill Detailing. So Invercargill is INVER. See if I can do this, CARGILL, and I hope you know how to spell detailing, but not everyone may know how to spell Invercargill. I had to type it out to spell it. But yeah, I'm at Invercargill Detailing on TikTok. Maybe check out some of my videos. Maybe you like my work. Maybe you hate it. Who knows? Let me know in the comment. It's good for engagement.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Awesome, Gabriel. Hey, thanks, man. And we'll talk again soon. Cheers.
No worries. Cheers. Thank you, Aaron.